All right, Module 10, and we're on day 1 for this. Again, our big goal for this is to create mathematical proofs. And we're going to use the parallel lines and transversals and triangle similarity to be able to do this. So our day 1 success criteria will be writing logic statements. That'll be our first thing that we're going to look at today. So our big goal for day 1 is to rewrite these statements as conditional statements or if-then statements, and then write the converse as well as we do that. Okay. So here's how we're gonna look at this. We are gonna identify, again, we're gonna identify a hypothesis, and then we're gonna identify a conclusion for each statement. And then once we've done that, we can then put it in if-then form. So these conditional statements are if this happens, then that happens. So it's always if. If we're doing if-then statements, it's always if, and then it's the hypothesis, whatever that is, and then we go then the conclusion. Okay? So as we look through this, we want to just identify both of those things. So I've got this statement: a rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction. So again, a rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction. So my hypothesis is I have a number that can be written as a fraction there. Sorry, I meant as I go through this, sorry, my fault here. So we're looking for that hypothesis. That hypothesis, I've got a number, a rational number. So this would be my hypothesis. And then my conclusion is that it can be written as a fraction. So I just need to be able to write this in a good sentence at this point in time. So I always start my sentence with if, and then I've got to put something about my conclusion. So if a number is rational, then it can be written as a fraction. So that would be my logic statement. So, and it might sound a little redundant, but we're just going to put these in much ordered form, because as we go to do our 2-column proofs or paragraph proofs, we're going to want to use if-then statements to help guide us. So again, you just take the hypothesis and put it after the if, the conclusion after the then. Okay? So if I look at this next sentence, I've got the square root of a negative number is an imaginary number. So my hypothesis would be taking the square root of a negative number, and my conclusion would be that it's an imaginary number. Okay? So again, if I write my conditional, it would be if a negative number is square rooted, then it is imaginary. Okay? So that's what we're doing with each of those. Okay, so those are your conditional statements. Actually, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this bottom, or this third one as well? So again, identifying my hypothesis and my conclusion. So when you have parallel lines, consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So having parallel lines would be my my hypothesis, and then my conclusion would be that my consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So how would I write this? Again, I start with if, and then I put lines are parallel, and then we go then consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So this should be pretty standard as you guys go through these, is just kind of making the sentence sounds good. And if you write it, if you structure it a little bit differently, that's all right. Just need to make sure The hypothesis after the if, and the conclusions after the then. Okay, so let's talk about this converse part. So the converse is just to flip the hypothesis and conclusion around. And sometimes we get sentences that are true, and sometimes we get sentences that are not true. Right now, we're just focusing on writing them. And then when we get into our proofs, we're going to actually use correct and true statements every single time. Okay? So if I look at this first sentence, I still have an if-then statement. So it's still if-then, but it's going to be if, and I'm going to take the conclusion of this conditional statement. So if a number is written as a fraction, and then I go then, it is rational. Okay, so all I did was just flip those suckers around. I just flipped the hypothesis and conclusion around. Okay, so if I look at this next one, the second example of converse, again, start with if. So if a number is imaginary, then we square rooted a negative number. Just like so. Just flip those things around. Okay, and then this third one here, again, I'm starting with if. So if consecutive, and I'm just going to go CIA, so consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Then the lines are parallel. Like so. And that's how you're going to be writing these if-then statements, these logic statements as you go through each of these. Again, the best thing to do is to take your original statement and make sure you maybe underline or circle the hypothesis or label them H and C so that you know which is which. And then once you've done that, we're going to put them in if-then statements. So a conditional statement is an if-then statement. A converse statement is an if-then statement. It just depends on the order. And then as we go through this unit, we're going to use statements that are always true, not sometimes or never. We always want to use statements that are always true as we work through proofs. And we'll get into that a little bit more. Okay? All right. We'll see you later. Bye.